So as I was saying, with rapid rehousing and HP projects, homeless prevention projects, there are very specific data elements that need to be recorded up front, so to avoid reporting errors later. We'll go over each of those as we enter clients into this project. I wanted to check with Andy, did you want me to start with a brand new family and create a household and then enter that household into the projects? Or do you want me to, because as you know, creating a household is more time intensive than if we were to start with an existing household?
You can start with an existing one. Pretty much everyone knows how to put them in.
Okay, great. So that will shave off easy 30 minutes of time, as you guys know, especially when we have those families that are quite large. But I will go over why it's important to, we have to review each client's information before we go fully enter them into the project. So I also have this rapid rehousing PowerPoint, but I feel like you guys, oh, and I wanted to ask Andy, are you doing any projects from with your enrollment process? Will clients be automatically entered into the projects, or will they be in your case review? And then upon, I'm not sure what your screening process is with these projects.
The ones that are going into ESG will, let me put it this way, the ones we currently have, the homeless prevention, will be going straight into ESG.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure once we get the rapid rehousing dollars, that will be the same as well. They'll come off the list and go straight into the program.
Oh, great. So you will be operating within the coordinated entry system and receiving those referrals?
Yeah, we're already working with the county on a new grant, and it's a COVID-2 grant that's coming out. Mm-hmm. And we'll be looking for 20 to 25 families. Well, I don't know what the specifics are, but 20 to 25 households that will be doing rapid rehousing off of the 1-by-1 list.
Excellent. Excellent.
And so that's the next couple months.
Yeah, we can definitely get some clients over to you guys ASAP. I'm sure you guys know about some long-term clients as well. And I do thank you so much for your continued efforts to identify and engage with those clients that are on the list. I can't tell you how much it will mean to their housing. Your engagement with those clients should result with them being housed with this next round of funding that we have coming, both from state ESG currently and also your ESG CV money as well. So we can really, impact some lives here. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
All right. So this is specific to rapid rehousing. I'm going to minimize Andy so he doesn't have to stare at himself the whole time. And you guys will receive this information, and this really is this PowerPoint, I need to take the time and convert it into a Word doc step-by-step. But if you guys follow the step-by-steps that are in this rapid rehousing training, it will definitely assist in the process. But so clients are typically referred through the coordinated entry system. Clients will enter through the coordinated entry system through an access point. Your agency is an access point, Salvation Army Manatee. We have, I believe, 10 access points throughout the continuum of care. Clients will then be prioritized for housing intervention service. Clients will be referred to COC housing intervention provider in CSIS via email. This would be you guys. And then referring agencies must respond to the referral within 3 business days. So we have just a little workflow for your reference as we're working off the community by name list. And this is where we're speaking of those clients that come from the by name list. We try, just like you guys, try to keep clients engaged in the process, but it does, sometimes it can take time, and cases go cold, and clients that were once active in the system are not anymore. But the goal and the point of your pre-enrollment project is to take these referrals you receive from the by name list, enter them into a pre-enrollment, which is your case review project. And then once the client is fully engaged with their housing plan and fully engaged and accept the opportunity to be rapidly rehoused, then you guys will enter them into a rapid rehousing project, into your HUD ESG rapid rehousing project. Because what happens, and Andy, and I'm sure a lot of you can attest to that, is that we enter clients, we have them do certain things, and then we never see them again. And when we are entering an abundance of clients into ESG projects, it creates a lot of room for error, really. When you use the case review file as like a waiting room to hold clients in that space, then you're able to really only enter those clients that are going to actively be working in the project. So the case review is very beneficial to you guys. So that way, when you go to look in your rapid rehousing project, only those that are actually engaged with the project and only those that are working towards housing are enrolled in that project. I recommend doing that. It essentially filters out the clients that are not either ready to be housed or remaining engaged with the project, and it doesn't clog up a lot of your ESG reporting with people that were never really served. People that never attended a case management session, or people that came once and you never saw them again. So it's a really great project for you guys to use as a way to hold clients in a project without actually entering them into that project. I have to switch back to my desktop. Bear with me. Oh, not that. Okay. So Andy, I'm assuming you'll mostly be doing the referrals, so we can probably skip through this slide, unless, yeah. So I would assume that.
So those, because it'd be a lot easier to center it through one place than have 5 or 6 people sending emails asking for people.
100%. I highly recommend just having one point of contact for the referrals. But we'll also walk through that once we get into the live site. The biggest thing with, as you guys know, with CSIS is making sure that we're in that right EDA. The biggest problem that we have in data entry is not entering data as the correct project. And when we have a lot of different projects at agencies, you guys are switching from one project to the next, and it can get confusing. So I always recommend, when you guys log in, to always ask yourself, what am I doing in here? I'm in Service Point right now. What am I doing in here? Oh yeah, I'm checking client. I think the Kardashians still exist in the training site. So I'm going to be Andy. I log in. Andy's default project is Challenge Grant Rapid Rehousing Turning Points. So anytime Andy logs into the system, he is entering data as that project. And he always has to ask himself, before he goes entering data as another project, what am I doing in here? And then that's going to help you identify what project we need to be working in. So here we have your ESG Care CV HP and your ESG Care CV Rapid Rehousing. these are the two projects that you guys are going to be working in mainly, I'm presuming. You also have your county ESG HP, which has existed for as long as I can remember. And Andy, if you ever want to go through these and see any that we can remove from your EDA list or from anybody else's, please let us know so it's not as cumbersome on your end visually. Yeah,
I'll send you a list.
Yeah, anytime anybody has any, please remove or please add. We want you guys have enough to worry about than to have projects on here that you just don't even use. So we're going to, let's do HP first. So Andy needs to always be thinking, what project am I working in? Oh yeah, I have clients that were entered. We're going to backdate. What am I doing? And what day am I doing it for? And typically you guys do live data entry, which is excellent. It works well for your timeliness score. It's more helpful to the system, and it definitely saves you guys time in the long run than having to go back and add a bunch of information if we'd just done it live in the first place. So first thing we always do is client search. The Kardashian family came in, they've fallen on hard times, and unfortunately we'll have to create a new client with this information. I am going to do this at the speed of light in the interest of time, so feel free to hop up and fill up your coffee. With your ESG grant, we really want to require those social security numbers. I know your agency is already pretty strict when it comes to obtaining social security numbers, but because ESG is a federally funded project, that is required. It's not recommended, it's required. If we don't collect it now, we'll end up having to collect it later. You know what, we're just gonna do this on the live site.
Do you want a real case?
I wish if you could share your screen, we could walk through it and do a real case, but unfortunately the system still shows me as entering the data, so it would look really weird. Maybe one day. All right, we're on backdate. I'm just gonna do a good old Brandon test. All right, first thing we always want to check, always, our ROI. I'm gonna mute you for a second. Go. So when we're checking for our universal release of information, I understand that you guys have your turning points release of information. We can include those, but we need this release of information and an attachment here. It's a means to CYA, right? We cannot have clients being discussed at case conferencing. We can't have clients that are that haven't been given their consent to share their information discussed. And really, when we're doing ESG, we are talking about federally funded money. So we need to make sure that we are sharing that information. It's going to get shared with your county. It's going to get shared potentially at case conferencing. So it's a CYA. The first thing you do when you have a client, check your ROI tab. Your universal ROI, cover your agency. We're going to look at the paperclip. We're going to make sure that when we view it, it is signed. Ideally, any clients coming from the list, unless they haven't been active in the system or connected with somebody recently, They should have a universal ROI in the system. It may be that the ROI is out of date, but again, that's just something we're going to cover your agency and make sure that we double check and scan and upload under the ROI tab.
All of our ESGs require 3 different ROIs, the county ones. So they're all going to get all that on Wednesday.
Excellent.
So they should all have.
Yeah, and I mean, it can all be added. I know that typically when we do add release of information, we're going to do it for Brandon and Amy. Keep in mind that one consenting adult cannot release the information of another. We only need your universal ROI, but I know that historically you guys have added it looks more like this. But we don't need all these projects. Like Andy wouldn't go through and add all 15 of his projects. If you guys need to cover your agency when it comes to having the county ESG, the TDP ROI as well, and our universal, this could be acceptable. But what ends up happening is when we add all these ROIs, they come up separately, and then it could potentially push some of these existing ROIs off. It's really just, I mean, recommended to have just the universal ROI, and then you can scan it all in together. But again, that's an internal decision. As long as we have at least this one and the scanned and uploaded version of, or copy of that signed ROI, it's really internally up to you guys how you want to do that. Okay. So entry exit, we all know how to add an entry, but let's review these really important data elements. Some of you may be used to working in a basic assessment. Because this is a HUD, it's a federally funded project, there is no basic entry assessment. So if you guys ever are entering data and this appears in your assessment, it's not a hall pass. We must still make sure that we are collecting the entry information. We're just in the wrong assessment type. Your county ESG and ESG HP project and ESG rapid rehousing project will be the type HUD. So anytime you think ESG, think your type HUD. And this is going to help you kind of not go through this process. So as you can see, this assessment pulls up. Now we have our favorite questions to ask. But as you guys know, this data, we don't know when this data was collected. We don't know when, how, where, who. We don't know if any of this information is correct. It's definitely not current, and it may not be consistent. So the goal is really to ask every one of these questions so you guys are able to provide a comprehensive and current picture of the client's story as of today. So it can be going through, let me zoom just a bit, and asking, it states here that your birthday is January 1st, 1980, and you are a white non-Hispanic male. You have identified previously as the head of household. Is this still true? And you are a family without children. This area is one of the most common areas that we end up having data completeness issues after the fact. Don't ask me why, but I think a lot of times we don't think that the household has changed or something, but this could often. So for instance, this is family without children, but we know that we have Amy and Ethan. Ethan is an adult right now, but we're gonna make believe that he is younger and that he's 15 or something. So even something like that, especially with our clients, they go in and out of the system and things change. People have their children, lose their children, all kinds of things. So we always just want to verify every bit of information. I don't want to say don't trust the data that's in here, but if you didn't enter it, don't assume that it's correct. Because I mean, I always use the example, if I, went up to Alexa and I said, hey, Alexa, I did this intake on a client. Can you put your name on it and turn it in for me? Well, Alexa is not just going to sign it and turn it in. She's going to review all of that information because her name is attached to that data. It is the same thing in CSIS. Your name is attached to all of these assessments, every one of them. So we want to make sure that our data is the best data. And I'm sure you guys are familiar. I know that Andy runs those data consistency report cards bi-weekly, if not weekly. So you're able to catch those errors as they happen. And if you guys ever have any questions, because data consistency can get a little wonky and confusing, please, do not hesitate to ask, even now on this call. So as we all know, I'm going to ask everybody to type into the chat box when we're asking prior living situation, what question are we asking? If you could type into the chat box. Thank you, Liz. Alrighty. Where we got Michelle, Alexa, Carmen. Perfect, perfect. Thank you. This will help you asking that question, because obviously we're in an HP project, right? So it doesn't make sense for this client to have a prior living situation of a place not meant for habitation. Not only is it inconsistent to the project type, but this is one of those areas that when Turning Points submits reports, this will come back as a error on the report. It will come back as a red flag. And then you have to go back and correct it and turn in the caper again. It's a nightmare, trust me. So we always want to be asking this because, as you guys all know, this changes from one day to the next. Someone might be in a place not meant for habitation one night, an emergency shelter the other night, a hotel the next night. Always ask these questions at every assessment. For your prior living situation in homeless prevention projects, we are thinking mainly it will never be a homeless situation. These will always be our category 2, where we're looking at rental by client. You could use a subsidy. It's unlikely that a client would come in with a subsidy, but you never know. Rental by client in a public housing, rental by client no ongoing housing, rental by client with other ongoing housing subsidy, owned by clients. So these are the clients that are late on their mortgage payments. So really, if we're working with a mortgage company, we're working with an owned by client. If we're working with a private or with a landlord, we're looking at a rental by client. So really, we want to work off of the joy of some of these projects is not much is left to the imagination, right? When we're doing access points, clients can come from pretty much anywhere. And other type of projects where we're screening SOS and TDP projects, there's a variety of places they could really be coming from. But when you're in your HP ESG project, you're really, we're looking at, because even, I don't want to get too into the weeds, but ESG can pay for Section 8 vouchers and back rent on vouchers, but it's only 3 months of rental arrears. So keep that in mind. If a client is in a public housing unit, ESG federal regulations does allow for up to 3 months of rental arrears. We did that last year with another provider with ESG HP. It wasn't you guys though. But either way.
Our ESG CV grant allows for up to 6 months retro.
In public housing, like in
Oh, not in
voucher?
public, in public housing. She said we can do the retroactive part, but we cannot do funding forward.
Okay, great, excellent. That's awesome. That's
I
so
have
good
one
to
of
hear.
those. We got it clarified from the county.
Great, that is great to hear. I know historically with the, classic ESG, it's 3 months of public housing or voucher, but obviously this time in CV funds it's unprecedented. So that's great to hear. Awesome. So really, like I said, we're going to work mainly off of anything from here down. So let's say that Brandon's rental by client, no ongoing housing subsidy. And then we always ask, where did you stay last night? How long have you been there? And Brandon's been in that location for a year or longer. And so his housing status, again, when you guys are working in your HP project, not much left to the imagination. There's not a lot of areas of inconsistency just due to the nature of the project. You're going to be looking at category 2 clients, and their prior living situation is going to be very limited to these below options. Okay, and then your zip code. Let's make a 34. I'm trying to remember a Bradenton zip code. Your COVID-19 information. I don't know that this speaks to your ESG CV funding, but it will definitely help us in the long run and your agency collecting this information. This is granted, clients come in for ESG CV funding, but they may not have been directly impacted by the COVID-19 or whatever the case may be. Ideally, they are. So this is also pretty much a given. If they're coming in for CV HP money, it's pretty much a yes. And then depending on what their response is, this client is unable to pay rent or mortgage. You can kind of look to, it's really how the client reports loss of job, so they can't pay their mortgage, and hopefully aren't facing eviction. Hopefully they're coming in to get these arrears paid for prior to the eviction notice, so that's not on their record. But it can be just give the list and however the client reports. They are reporting that they are unable to pay rent or mortgage. Okay. So as we go through, does the client have a disabling condition? We do not want to just see this as the response and keep it moving. We always want to HUD verify first. Click on your HUD verification to ensure that you guys are responding, asking every one of these questions and responding with the most complete, current, consistent, and correct information. Because again, we don't know when this client received this previous assessment, who asked these questions, whether the client was comfortable giving additional information about their disabilities. Either way, it's beneficial to go through this list with the client to ensure that it is complete, current, consistent, and correct. So we have alcohol abuse, alcohol drug abuse, chronic health condition, developmental drug abuse, HIV or AIDS, mental health problem, or physical health condition. So in this assessment, Brandon is identifying as having a mental health problem or mental health disorder, and he is also identifying to you that he has a chronic health condition. So you want to make sure that your data is the 4 C's. I've thought about doing a drinking game with water or coffee in the morning every time I say complete, current, consistent, and correct, because I feel like I say it a million times in these trainings. Anyways, so to report that this client has a chronic health condition, we need to end this no. So we're going to click our pencil. We need to end it for the day before. We are make-believing that we are on February 1st. So the day before would be the 31st of January. We're going to save. From here, we can see now that the response went to incomplete. You can now answer yes. And then, depending on the client's response, is it expected to be long continued and substantially impairs client's ability to live independently? Brandon identifies that no, it doesn't impair his ability to live independently, but he does have a chronic health condition. So then we can save. From here, now we know that this, in fact, is current, and we can exit. We're going to scroll up, and if this response was inconsistent to the responses in the HUD verification sub-assessment, we would then have our response for whether the client has a disabling condition. And this was something, this is something that Turning Points, if you guys still specifically ask this question, this is specific to your assessment.
We don't do that one anymore.
Okay, so if you guys are going through your assessments and there are questions in here that you don't use anymore, send them over to us and we can remove them for your assessment, because there's no sense in having questions that we don't ask on your assessment. It bogs down your time, and it definitely makes the message of ask every question in your assessment inconsistent when we go back and we're like, ask every question except for this one, this one, this one, and this one. So just let us know anytime that there are questions in your assessment that you need removed. I'm going to take a picture of that and get rid of that. Actually, Andy, if you could send me an email so I'm not just removing stuff without your permission.
I will. We ended the contract with Stay Well and Well Care, so I'll get that information to you.
Thank you, Andy. All right. Same thing with our health insurance. We want to HUD verify first. We cannot just see this yes and assume that it's correct. You always want to ask the question for yourself, right? So we HUD verify first, go through the list. Do we have Medicaid, Medicare, VA medical services, employer provided health insurance, private pay? Private pay if your clients have are under the Affordable Care Act and receive health insurance from the marketplace. This would be how you report that health insurance. But Brandon identifies that he still receives his VA medical services health insurance. So this is complete, current, consistent, and correct. We know that this is correct, this is correct. Let's keep it moving. Income. This is the most common area of inconsistencies. There are a variety of ways that we can look to see what's open and what is closed. I recommend going to the HUD verification like everything else. You can look at your magnifying glass, filter all of your incomes to see what's open. But what ends up happening is that there can be, so many incomes, like as you can see, especially clients that are regularly in our system, it can get a little clustered and it's harder to read. But if you guys go into your HUD verification first, this will show you only the fields that have open yeses. So we can verify from there. Do you still receive the child support in the amount of $300? And he says yes. And then what was the client is connected to VA service connected disability compensation in the amount of $1,100. The client verifies that this is in fact true. If the client had determined or stated that they are not currently receiving that funding, you would of course end it for the day before and then populate to no. And let's give this client unemployment insurance instead. So we're going to end this no. And we're going to say yes. I guess I'm not backdating. Oh. Gonna save and exit. We can filter again. Are you? Oops. Make sure that only our monthly amounts that are open are the child support and our unemployment. Gonna go up and change that. Alrighty. From here, non-cash benefits, definitely just want to make sure that we're asking and verifying, do you receive food stamps still? Client identifies as yes. If they do not, if the client is in need of food stamps, I know that you guys do an excellent job working with our clients to assist them getting access to the My Florida Access account with your computer lab and everything. It's really great. All right, so we're going to verify that as a yes. This is a yes. Keep it moving. Domestic violence victim or survivor, well, please ask this question. I know it may not feel like it's essential to your specific project, but as a whole for the COC, we have to pull these numbers when we're asked this question. So oftentimes our applications, and I'm not sure about for the county, but as we're applying for our CV2 funding, there's a question on our CV2 proposal that is asking how many clients identify as victims of domestic violence. This is where we pull that information. So if we don't have this question answered, we are not showing an accurate depiction of the special groups in our community. This is the only area in our CSIS system where we can support those clients that are fleeing domestic violence to identify that need. So we're going to ask and answer. Here's where we have our client residence and last permanent address. We always want to make sure that we are ending any old information in here. I'm sure that you guys have gone through and seen, maybe you've received a referral, or maybe a client has come in and you want to call them to do a post-exit follow-up of some sort, whatever the case may be. If there is old information in your client's residence last permanent address, I'm working to get this changed, because really we just need contact information, because that language of last permanent address is very confusing, and entering a last permanent address if the client doesn't live there anymore doesn't really help anybody. So really, let's just see this visually as client contact information. Either way, if we go through here and we see that the contact information is not current, it's not correct, it's not consistent, we want to end any old ones. So we're going to end this one. And we're going to add a new one. This is going to be because the clients are in an HP project. They are currently in an address, right? They have an address, they have their lease in hand and their eviction notice. And they're going to tell you where they are staying. And this is, so if you just type in their zip code and hit apply zip code information, this will pop up and you can say save. We're going to do a email, because I'm not sure about your county ESG, but some ESG requires, some funders require you to do post-exit follow-ups. It's in your contract, I'm not sure. But adding email and cell phone will help you contact that client after your after you've provided that service.
We follow up with 100% of our clients that get funded for up to a year.
I love that. Thank you so much. All right. So, so how much easier is it to follow up with a client if there's accurate information in here, right?
We pull that right away, and if it's not there, the case manager updates it. So it's all done within a month.
Thank you so much for that. Then if nobody else in the COC thanks you, I thank you, because it is very helpful to have, it's really unhelpful to have old outdated contact information in here. It's a waste of your time. I cannot preach that enough. So thank you. All right, I actually need to, what day is it? It's 12. Okay. So from here, we've added the client. Now you can, if you ever wanted to go back, even do a home visit if necessary. You'll have the client's email. You'll be able to show that as support documentation if it was ever requested that you sent this client a post-exit follow-up email, and you have the most current cell phone number. From here, we can just simply verify the client's emergency contact information. If the client refused, I always recommend if the client refuses to give you certain contact information, either write NA or write client refused. It's a CYA, cover your agency, and it shows the system that you asked the question, but the client didn't give you the answer. So from here, we're going to save, but we are not done. Because we have the other members of the household, this is the biggest area where we find data entry issues in the long run. Because we've only worked off the head of household's information and we didn't go into the other household members, it will create and can create discrepancies on your reports that you send in later. And you're like, well, I did the head of household. We have to make sure that we're going into each member of the household and updating that information. So to make sure that Amy and Ethan's living situation matches Brandon's, we can simply add household data, click on that, select the entire household. We'll need to change this household type in a moment, but we'll go over that. And so now whatever is on Brandon's living situation will carry over to Amy and Ethan. So all this information that we have responded with previously with Brandon, we're going to delete our housing move-in dates because they're not necessary for your project. And we'll also create a discrepancy on reporting, especially at entry. So if there's a housing move-in date for any of your clients in either HP or rapid rehousing, delete that housing move-in date. Because if they're HP, they've already been housed and it's not necessary to them. If they're rapid rehousing and they're coming into your rapid rehousing project, it's likely that they have lost that housing that came about from that housing move-in date. So if there are housing move-in dates in these fields upon entry in either of your projects, you want to remove that. Okay, additional information. We can fill out our income. And where they are. Save and exit. So now when we go over to Amy and Ethan, their information has carried over. But do we see here that Amy is identified as head of household? She, in fact, is the head of household's partner. But if we did not go through this assessment, can you please show how you did that one more time? Of course. Let me go back. I can zoom out too if it's a little too close. Thank you, Liz. Okay, so I'm in Brandon. I'm in the head of household. We went through the entire assessment with Brandon. You always save. And then when we scroll back up to the top of the assessment, we're going to add household data. We click the entire household. And then we ensure that this information is complete, current, consistent, and correct. This will be the information that we've asked Brandon just recently in our assessment. And by clicking on the other household members and saving an exit, that will carry over to Amy. You're welcome. Thank you for asking, Liz. To Amy, and when we look at Ethan as well, he will also have that same information. So when we go into Amy's record, as we can see, we know Brandon was identified as the head of household. Well, Amy had previously, at some point, who knows when, also identified in a head of household. So we need to make sure that this part is correct. And this does create reporting nightmares in the long run with, like, if anybody's had to talk to Amy about changing the head of households, they'll just, I don't know how it happens, but it's just one of those things that's overlooked because we're not checking our double twice or, you know. So let's always make sure that we're reviewing our head of household and our household type. So everybody has the same, well, the household type is the same for the entire household, and each relationship to head of household is consistent to their relationship to the head of household. From here, we can scroll through our COVID-19 information. It's most essential for the head of household, but if you are in here and you are asking the question, go right ahead and add that, but it is reported by the head of household. Disabling condition, again, we're not just going to go off of yes or no. We need to HUD verify and review the information here with Amy. See if she identifies as having any type of alcohol and drug abuse, chronic health, developmental drug abuse, HIV, AIDS, mental health, or physical health condition. She identifies that she does not currently have any of these disabling conditions. So this is complete, current, consistent, and correct. We scroll, scroll, scroll. Same with our health insurance. Cannot just assume that this is correct. HUD verify first, review with the client. See here, we see that the client does not, in fact, have any health insurance. But she is going to say to us that she's covered along with Brandon with that VA medical services. She is his spouse, so we need to end this no. Sorry if I'm using different dates. I thought I was backdating, but we'll still be all right. So we're ending this no. Maybe when Amy answered this question, she wasn't married to Brandon. Now that she is, she's covered under his VA medical insurance, whatever the case may be. She is now covered under this type of health insurance, and we need to report that. So we end it for the day before. This goes incomplete, and we add a yes. Save and exit. Scroll back up, and now it's consistent. Before it was not actually, because it said here that she did have health insurance, but then in our HUD verification, everything was a no. So that was inconsistent, and your diligence made it consistent. So thank you. All right, scroll through. Total monthly income. We're going to ask the client first, HUD verify. Do you receive any sources of these incomes? We're going to go down the list. She identifies that she still receives her SSDI. You can verify, is that SSDI still in the amount of $750? She indicates yes, so this is still accurate. She's going to identify that she actually is working part-time at Publix, where she makes $10 an hour, 10 hours a week, $400 a month. So we end this no for her earned income. End it for the day before. Damn it. Save. Earned income. I'm going to say yes. I'm going to show that $400 a month. If you want to write a note, by all means, part-time at Publix. So now we have our $400, our $750. We're going to exit from here. Make sure we add that together. And this is complete. Non-cash, the head of household, Brandon, is the one who receives the food stamps. So it's not likely that both household heads or both household members would receive. It's typically one or the other. It's either Brandon or Amy. And in this case, it is Brandon who receives the food stamps. So this is correct. We're going to scroll through here. Same thing. Even if there's information here, it just doesn't really bode well to have data not collected from here. You can change it to select, or really with this response, you could have data not collected, but it kind of looks like you didn't ask the question if data not collected is there. So same thing with the contact. She's not homeless. We're going to end that. Because what if something happens, you know, to Brandon, or Brandon leaves the household and you have to do a post-exit follow-up and you want to have Amy's information too. Apply zip code information. We're going to have atess@gmail and her cell phone number. And save. There we go. Emergency contact remains the same. Save. And we're going to go up to Ethan. But I'm going to breeze through this in the interest of time, just to make sure that everything is correct. We're going to say that it all is. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Clients, the youth in this situation, if the client was, you know, under the age of 18, COVID-19, again, if it's something that, yeah, the client has also lost their job, feel free to respond. But if the client's a youth, it really only applies to the head of household that we're looking for that information. If the head of household was impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, it's likely the entire household has been, it's kind of like a catch-all. I'm going to verify HUD verification. Disability, all good. Insurance. Same thing. Client doesn't currently receive any income. Verify that. Same as food stamps. No. And might as well add his information. It just depends on the age of the client. Okay. Save and exit. We did everybody, so we are good. We went through every family member. That is the biggest thing I think about when we're entering clients into these projects. It's being mindful of their living situation and making sure that it's consistent with the project type. So that means that their residence prior, where did they stay last night, is if they're entering into an HP project, then we're limiting it to those rental by clients, owned by clients. Being mindful of the housing the head of household and the relationship to head of household. And then of course, you know, because oftentimes when we have clients that come in as household members and maybe they've previously existed in the COC, but nobody went and did each of those HUD verifications for each of those clients' records. That happens all the time. So with you guys, you're going to go through, hopefully, hopefully everybody can do this, but it happens, you know. We're just going through the motions and trying to get clients checked into the project that we forget, oh, I have to do this entire assessment for the rest of the household members. So just being very mindful of that, because it does create data reporting nightmares and more work for yourself because you have to go back and correct all of it. I know Turning Points is a stickler for good data, and you guys do very well on your data quality report cards every month. And the reason is because you have people that are monitoring your data. I know that Andy has in the past, not sure if you still are, but it's a great way to stay ahead of the game running those data consistency report cards, that's for sure.
We check them at least twice a month, if not more, and make sure they're all clean by the end of the month.
Yeah, and that's what, I mean, you're proactive. It takes so much more time. I mean, I think Alexa and Andy can remember when the data consistency report cards first came out and we had pages of inconsistencies, and it was not fun to correct, you know, a year's worth of data or even a month's worth of data. It is a lot easier to correct a week or two's worth of data. And then being also, of course, proactive. So we're taking our time and being patient with ourselves in the intake process. You know, I know that you guys have a lot of clients that you're working with, and it can get overwhelming and we're trying to just move through the steps. But as with any other thing, the quicker you move sometimes, the more likely you're to make a mistake. So it's slowing down, taking our time, and making sure we're asking and answering every question. So with your HP, Andy, is this like a in and out, or are we case managing? What are we doing with clients in HP?
HP, we stay with them for as long as they need help, up to the 24 out of 36 months.
Awesome. All right, so let's add ourselves as a case manager. Best way, just do your head of household. If you add yourself as a case manager to the entire household, it can bog down your client list. If you have, like Andy has his clients set up on his counts report, if we're doing the head of household, then you're not going to have the other two members. It's the same thing. It goes without saying that if you're case managing the head of household, you're case managing the household. We're going to add case manager, and we're going to start a case plan. Okay, add goal, case plans. Totally up to you guys how you want to do this. I always recommend keeping it, unless your grant specifies, to have it be very specific in the classification, to keep it general. Case management classification, your type is meet with case manager regularly. Overall status, in progress or identified. And we're going to add this goal. This way, any note that we put in this client's case plan, we can identify the specific objective here. Client will receive, I spelled that wrong. We want our notes to be descriptive of what happened, because you guys have so many cases and so many clients. You want to do yourself the favor and add helpful notes that you can refer back to. So you know, what did I talk about with Brandon last week? He came in for something I can't even remember. Let me look at my notes. So 4 months arrears. Client will work with CM as long as client is objective. Maybe we need client to increase income. And then we're going to say client lost job due to COVID-19. Household spouse, whoops, currently, you guys know how to write. You guys write awesome cases. Receives VA, ability, etc. Will apply for jobs. 3 jobs, and then, you know, adding notes. What jobs did I tell him to apply for? Walmart, These are the locations. Whatever you guys need to do. Publix. But your case notes should always be reflective, a synopsis of what happened during that case management session. Because as you guys know, you guys work with a lot of clients, they'll all get mushed together. And if Brandon calls or comes in for another case management session, you want to be able to go back to your note and see what you guys talked about at the last meeting. So here we go. We'll go over adding an action step. Some of your grants, like TANF grant, requires very specific action steps. Some of your project will require very specific notes, very specific areas covered under that, or maybe just your program manager. Maybe, you know, Andy wants to see these certain areas covered. What did you talk about? How is the client going to maintain stable housing? What are they going to do to budget better? What is the process? What are we doing? What are we doing? From here, you can add a service. So let's add a case management service from this goal. So we're still in this goal that we created for the client. We're going to add a service. And this is going to take us to the service transactions page. We hit OK. You select the entire household. We select the service type, case management, save and continue. Oh, something I wanted to remind you guys. If you guys ever see, always double check, make sure your service provider is the provider that you need to be in. If your service provider is ever wrong here, maybe when you popped up, it says count, and this is going to be, I feel for you guys, I wish we could have done different project names to help you better delineate them. But if you see, for instance, County ESG HP, but you know that this is a CARES client, we can't just continue, save and continue. I'm like, oh, County ESG, I'm in the wrong oh no. Let me just change the type here. No, we have to exit. We have to be entering data as the right project, because it will create a reporting nightmare. So if you had entering data as ESG Cares and the project or the service provider was County ESG HP, they wouldn't talk to each other. It would create a year from now, or even a month from now, when you guys go to enter your reports, these would not talk to each other. So always make sure that your service provider of the service you're about to add is the project that the client's in. If it is not, you're in the wrong EDA. And it's the same thing with your entry exit. If you guys are ever entering a client into a project and the provider is wrong, it's a different project, you're in the wrong EDA. So it's one of those things that if we take our time and we're patient with in the forefront, that it will save you a heap of trouble in the long run. So we're in the right service provider, EDA is correct, service type is case management, save and continue. For our case management services, really all we're doing, we're making sure that everybody's included. County ESG, County ESG Cares, case management, scroll to the bottom. We're going to close our need because you provided that service. You fully met. And save and exit. So Brandon's coming in fully prepared. He's got all his ducks in a row. He has everything that you guys needed to provide the service, the financial assistance service. He does not have to return. You guys are able to provide that service while he's in the office at the moment. Just so I'm clear, Andy, will the CMs, because some agencies are now having just one person add the financial services, will CMs be doing it themselves?
Yeah, all the case managers put them in themselves.
Okay, great. Just making sure. So we're going to provide a financial assistance service. And this is a great place for you guys to look, before we go entering clients into projects. This is how we can see what services the client has received in the past. So maybe if this service was from an HP project on February 7th and JFCS had put it in there, it would be like, well, it looks here that you just received a similar service from JFCS. This is a big reason why timeliness is so important, is that we don't want to continue to duplicate services that have already gone on from other COC members. So we always want to check client records to see if a similar service has been created by a COC providing agency. So someone within our continuum of care that has access to CSIS. So if this had, said February 7th and it was an HP rental assistance, that might raise a couple flags for you to be like, hey, Brandon, it looks here that you received a similar service from Rapid Rehousing or from SSVF JFCS. I'm going to connect with that case manager to see if they're still working with you. And it's a way of creating a checks and balance that maybe the client isn't aware. I think by now some clients are pretty aware that we all pretty much talk to each other and can see what's happening amongst the COC. But definitely a good place to look prior to receiving the service to identify any inconsistencies. So from here, we're going to say that this checks out and he's good. We're going to add a service. Same thing, we're going to apply it for the entire household. Make sure we're in the right type or in the right service provider. Our service type, we're going to do rent payment. He was a couple months arrears, so we're going to save and continue. I have the step-by-step guides that I'll be sending out after this. Let me see if I can pull it up, because I'm not going to go through the whole process since we are in the live site. But our step-by-step guides include the how to add a financial assistance service. Let me pull this up. So you guys can, oh, that's not it. I'm sorry. So you guys can follow along with that after your training. Print it out, keep it at your desk until you feel really comfortable adding these services. Okay, so we have step-by-step, creating a service, non-financial. First thing, make sure you're EDAing as the right project. Service transactions, make sure we're in the right project, right type. So here's our financial. It is the same steps, but when we go to apply funds for service, this is how we do it. And I'm going to walk you through that, but you guys will have this for your reference to use after training. So we have the whole household, rent payment, apply funds for service. We always got to click this little guy. So this information populates. Our vendor. You can use landlord. You can search various, maybe there's an address in here. If you have utility, you have City of Bradenton utility. If clients come in for their utility arrears, there's the City of Bradenton, FPL. But we're coming in for rental arrears. So we just need housing assistance vendor, landlord. From here, if the client has any copay, maybe Brandon has $100 to contribute, a little bit of buy-in for the client. And then we're going to add our funding source. From here, your county ESG cares funding, hit plus, and then we add the total arrears. So is there a dollar amount that's the max amount, or is it just like 6 months, so 6 times 750? Would that be allowable, or is there a dollar amount that is max?
There's no dollar amount.
Okay,
Just
I
up
wouldn't
to
think
6
so.
months.
Okay, so let's just, let's say that he's 3 months and at, what's realistic? 1,100. I didn't need a calculator for that, but he's 3 months arrears. He has his buy-in. His total arrears is 3,300. He's got his buy-in of $100. ESG Care CV is going to cover 3,200 of it. We're going to calculate that. You could add support documentation here to the service. I always recommend adding it to the case plan because it's more efficient for you guys to scan and upload all the documents that are associated with the client's case plan to the client's case plan. It can help having it here, but it really makes more sense and is more efficient for you guys. Just like you have all of your physical files, your physical paperwork in the client's case plan, to upload it to the electronic case plan. From here, I am not going to save this because we are in the live site, but we would say closed, fully met, save and exit. So if you guys have any questions while you're still learning in how to apply financial using the fund manager, you know, you can always call me, always call Andy. Andy and Alexa are very familiar with doing this. I think all of you, some of you are very familiar with adding funds. But yeah, please use our step-by-step guides until you get more comfortable. This has even a little quick, your ID3 is for landlords, 120 is for other utilities, and then you can search for specific vendors. It's literally a step-by-step. Okay. I'm going to exit from here so we don't actually remove $3,200 from your ESG CV funds and have to figure out what we did. From there, we would see our service of rent payment. There would be this little house guy and that $3,200 amount. From there, you guys can set another appointment with the client in your case plan. Let's set a follow-up appointment. We're going to do a post-exit follow-up appointment or even just a follow-up appointment. So we're going to say CM will contact client in 2 weeks to ensure stability. This is an action step for yourself. So we're going to click on our calendar. We're going to say on the 26th, you're going to make sure that the clients are good. Do a follow-up and save action step. We're going to save and exit. And we're going to keep the clients open. This is the end of this HP session with this client. When we go back home, we can see Andy uses his follow-up list regularly. We'll be able to see Andy's client. Brandon will be added to his counts report. If you guys ever have any questions in setting these up, please feel free to contact myself or, of course, Andy. I'm sure he's happy to help you guys. But this is, I mean, this is set up pretty awesome. I mean, we have everything we needed on his homepage. So Andy knows in 14 days, he needs to check on this action step. It's like, what is that action step? Oh yeah, I was going to call Brandon in 2 weeks to make sure that he's okay. To remove this follow-up, we're going to say yes. Say we completed it and he's good. Just to get it off Andy's task list. From here, we can add a case note. We're going to pretend we're in the future. Clients remain stably housed. 20889. obtained job at Publix, time, client's son, also working full-time to assist households with goods and other expenses. Client will remain open for something to that effect. Of course, you guys know how to write good case notes, so, but like I said, something that you guys want to go back and say, what did I talk to you about with this client? From here, save and exit. So we wrote that the client increased their income. We want to reflect that through an interim. For our interims, we're going to click here. Add an interim review. We can do update or 30-day review, update, however you guys want to do it. We can include the whole household. Make believe we're in the future. And now able to maintain housing. This is good. We can do stably housed if the clients are in fact stably housed. Let's increase his income. HUD verification. So he is no longer receiving unemployment insurance. We can end this in unemployment insurance. Because we're make-believing we're in the future. We're going to say no here. Add our earned income. End this no. And now say yes. And let's say he's working full-time, 40 times 10, 16. So let's just 1,600 full-time at Publix. Boom. So we have the 1,600 plus his $300 in child support, 1,900, puts him over 30%. Scroll to the bottom. We're going to go to Ethan, because Ethan got a job too. Good for Ethan. I don't know about y'all, but I was working when I was like 15. I haven't stopped, so. Kids running around without jobs. I don't know what's going on. Change his income. And we'll say that he's making 800 part-time at Tippy. Okay, everything else is correct. Boom. So now we've shown the system that both these clients have increased their income while they were working in your project. Also included in your step-by-step guides that I will send out if you guys haven't received them. I feel like Ursula, anybody that's recently gone through our basic skills has received most of these step-by-step guides, but I'll send them out to everybody after this training. Okay. So when your clients are ready to be exited, we can add a case plan, add a case note explaining clients are stably housed and requested to be exited from the project, etc., etc. From here, we're going to entry exit. Hit our exit. And we're going to continue to tell the story. What happened? Why are they leaving? If the story is that they disappeared, then that's why they left. Maybe other stories, they're no longer eligible. They stopped coming in. They just we don't know what happened to them. Needs cannot be met. But luckily for this family, they completed the program. They maintained their stable housing. Clients we'll say live in the future, save and continue. Here, we've updated this information. Oh, I forgot to, in your interim, if you guys are doing your interims or even upon exit, we do have the question, the COVID-19 question, because we had so many clients that, I'm not sure about your project in rapid rehousing projects, but we had clients right before COVID-19 that were getting to the point of stability. And then COVID-19 hit and they lost their job, they lost their income, and they were right there just about to be stable and completely lost everything, like 90% of America. So if that were the case for these clients, we would answer, has COVID-19 affected your ability to gain or maintain housing? So this is like a before and after. At the time of entry, COVID-19 affected your ability or created your at-risk or literal homeless situation. But since then, has the pandemic affected your ability to gain or maintain? So with this family in particular, they were all, well, two of them were able to get jobs. So the response would be no. But maybe that's not the story. I mean, we still have, fortunately in Florida, we are wide open, as everybody knows. But in other areas, the unemployment, as you guys all know, is just through the roof. And it is hard for clients to get jobs, for anybody to get jobs. So if it's a yes, it's a yes. And we're going to explain why. It's just another place for us to be able to report. I mean, I'm sure in this, maybe not this year's COC NOFA, but next year or some funder somewhere is going to ask how many people were literally homeless or at risk of homelessness due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And we will be able to provide that information based on the data that you guys enter here. Just like when we're talking about the DV clients, how many clients are victims of domestic violence or survivors of domestic violence? We get all of that information from this assessment. So all of it means something, all of it goes somewhere. From here, we're going to save and exit. Like Andy said, we do post-exit follow-ups. My recommendation is to do the same thing with your action steps and keep those open, because it's kind of hard for you guys, for anybody to remember, when am I doing a post-exit follow-up? If you add an action step, post-exit follow-up, CM will do, and we exit the client. This date was the date that we exited the client.
Given that we do it for all we can do it on our spreadsheet.
Okay.
So we can look off a spreadsheet for all programs.
Great. So I'm just going to add this. You guys have your own way of recording that, but for purposes of training and future reference, we're going to add, give yourself some leeway time, so there are specific reports that if you're not within that 30-day window, the system doesn't report, obviously, if you didn't do a 30-day post-exit follow-up within 30 days, it's going to show that you didn't do the post-exit follow-up. So you always want to give yourself like a week before, or a couple days before, to remind yourself that this is happening and that we need to do this post-exit follow-up. Save action step, save and exit. So again, when we go back to our home screen, we have that action step. This one gets removed in just a moment. And then when we view Andy's, it'll be towards the bottom. I don't want to go into all your business, but here's Andy. And we can go right to that. And you're like, oh, yeah, that's right. I was going to do that. But you guys have your own system. Works for me. Okay, save and exit. And then from there, you would do, as you all know, your post-exit follow-up, add here. And there's a step-by-step on this also in your step-by-step guide for future reference. I think it's the last one. Or maybe not. There's your to complete follow-ups. Okay. Follow-up type, 30-day. Save and continue. And now it's just a very basic follow-up. What are we doing? It was a 30-day. We did it on this date. The clients are still in home. End date's the same. And we can save. You can add this information, add as much as you'd like. Your follow-up includes a lot more. And Andy, again, if you guys want to look through this and if there's anything, it looks like your follow-up includes a lot more information. Totally up to you guys, but this is your Turning Points follow-up assessment. So if there's anything in here that doesn't necessarily need to be asked, but it looks like you guys go through and ask all of these questions, which is very helpful to the system. Greatly appreciate it. See, this needs to be this. Okay, save and exit. So now we have that completed. So we can now end ourselves as case manager. We're going to say 0401. We've done all we can. We're in here and we're good. You guys are good. I can go through the rapid rehousing part, but really it mirrors pretty much everything we just did in HP. The only difference being that when you guys are working with your rapid rehousing clients, their residence prior is obviously going to be a literal homeless situation. So place not meant for habitation, emergency shelter, or emergency shelter paid for by hotel voucher. But really everything else is the same. I mean, we just have to be mindful that if we're working with HP clients and providing HP assistance, that we're in an HP project. And that's the biggest thing that we end up is because I wish we could like bold underline or like exclamation points or something so we can be more mindful or it's more obvious. Just to be very aware of which clients are in which project and making sure that we're entering them correctly, because it is like I said before, it is a reporting nightmare for you guys, and it's just so much extra work for you guys to have to go back and edit and delete and create all this stuff. So please be very patient with yourselves as you go through this system, as you learn what clients are going into which project. And with these county ESG funds, your type will always be HUD. It will never be basic. Yeah, so highlights are really making sure that we are consistent in our head of households, our household types, our prior living situation is consistent, and the housing status is consistent with the project that they're entering. Going through each client's record upon entry to make sure that this information is complete, current, consistent, and correct. And then when providing those services, you know, being very mindful that if we're wrong here, if this service provider is wrong, then we need to change our EDA. And that's with any project. That's, I mean, that's across the board. But specifically with county ESG, you guys have very, very specific reports that if this stuff doesn't talk to each other, it's just a nightmare later. So be patient with yourselves as you work in these projects. Do you want me to go over rapid rehousing, or you think we're good, Andy?
I think we're good, and we'll be retesting or retraining internally as well. And then every case as they approve before they give any forms out, every case gets reviewed as well. So
great.
Didn't have a problem with that.
Saves a lot of headaches. I'm sure you know from experience going through the checks and balances before things are provided and funds are provided. It definitely saves a lot of headaches and data entry issues. So yeah, the best thing, my best advice is to be patient with yourself and take your time. You know, clients are in here, and if they're tapping their foot, that's fun. Let them tap their foot. You know, you have to do things right the first time so we don't have to go back and do them again. So please, I implore you to be patient with yourselves. I will send you the rapid rehousing training, and this really outside of enrolling in rapid rehousing project, case managing in rapid rehousing, like you can just literally change the rapid rehousing to HP and vice versa. So, and then you'll also get your step-by-step guides that will be very helpful. We've got everything, creating a service, follow-ups, rental unit offers for those clients that enter rapid rehousing, housing move-in date, which you know is so important to the system. When we rapidly rehouse clients, adding that housing move-in date in an interim is essential to showing that you guys have housed this client. We have reports, Andy, if you want to, once you guys get up and running, to start to run those monthly or however often you want to. Same way you run the consistency reports, it looks at of the clients in this project who has a housing move-in date, and it will give you that information. So you can make sure that if anybody on there has received financial assistance, obviously for a house, we need a housing move-in date. What else is on here? Going through and ending disability and HUD verification information, creating a household, entry exits. So yeah, use these while you guys are still learning, and even just to go back and refer. And if you all ever have any questions at all that come up, never hesitate to ask. We are always here to help. And thank you guys for all your work and all your efforts and your attention and participation in this class today. Thank you guys very much. That wasn't too painful, right?
That wasn't bad.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lauren.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you. What was that, Andy?
I said I'll start getting the complaints when they start doing cases in a couple weeks.
You have to do to learn, right?
Right.
It looks easy, and then you're like, God.
It's not hard. There's just a lot of papers.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine, especially with county funds and ESG, and oh my gosh, you know what we have to deal with on the invoice side. So
yeah.
All right, guys. I will also, once this recording is published, I'll share that with you guys also. And it's only an hour and a half long, so not too bad of a Friday night, you know what I mean? All right, guys. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.